In this video, I'll be painting a Japanese Type 97 Chiha tank. You can use the same colours and techniques to paint any of the Japanese armoured vehicles from Banzai. I'll be covering some suggestions for painting bright yellow, and I'll give a basic primer on using oil washes. Start by base coating the tank with Comrade Khaki, either brushed on or applied with an airbrush. You could also use German Armour Desert, which is still available from our older War Paint range of spray colours. Now the camo. For this hard-edged pattern, I'll be painting the colours freehand, starting with Oxide Red. Alternatively, you can use Boot Brown, which is less red if you want a lower contrast look. I'm painting the camo onto the radio antenna. You could also leave it the base colour. Because I'm being quite rough, I'll go back when the brown is dry and touch up any thin areas which need a second coat. Next I'll add Tankervy green. You could use army green if you prefer a brighter green which contrasts more with the brown, but Tankervy green looks best to me. Aim to cover about a quarter of the vehicle, leaving roughly half the tank in the base colour. That's the basic camo colours done. Now let's talk for a minute about painting yellow. It can be a notoriously troublesome colour because whatever type of paint you're using, bright yellow pigments are quite translucent, so they don't cover very well. Over white, yellow can look sort of washed out or fluorescent. And over black or dark colours, it can go sort of green and sickly. Even if you paint several coats, it's still difficult to get it to cover nicely. You get better results if you underpaint with a colour similar to yellow, but which is more opaque and which covers better, like Sicily yellow. Bright flesh colours like European skin also work great for underpainting yellow. I'll use Sicily yellow to underpaint the wavy yellow lines which are such a distinctive part of the Japanese camouflage scheme. The lines should form a rough cross shape, and it looks good if you centre the cross on top of the turret. Start with the turret and mark where the lines continue onto the hull. Take your time and paint the lines neatly and let that dry. Now for a nice rich warm yellow, I'll carefully paint cavalry yellow over the top of the lines. Next I'll paint the tracks battlefield brown to simulate built up dirt and crud. No need to worry about being too neat. When that's dry, heavily dry brush dark gunmetal. Also paint the machine guns and the metal parts of the tools. For the wooden tool handles I'll use Boot Brown. Now everyone likes nice rusty looking exhausts. The way I do these is to paint them Oxide Red first, then stipple on a mix of Oxide Red and Rust Orange. Next paint the road wheels black or worn rubber. Some people skip this step, but I think it's worth the effort. We're nearly ready to do the oil wash. This will just be an introductory look at this technique. I'm not an expert and there are plenty more in-depth tutorials out there if you want to find out more, but I can demonstrate the basics. Firstly, it works much better on a non-porous surface. The wash won't sink into the paint surface underneath if you give it a gloss finish. People use a variety of aerosol, airbrush or brushed-on varnishes. I'm using this Vallejo polyurethane varnish as it gives a good, hard, glassy finish. Of course, using this technique means you need to have access to a good matte varnish or dull coat to use at the end. I've diluted the varnish with water and I'm applying it all over the model using an old brush. Give it plenty of time to dry thoroughly. Now for the oil wash. You can use simple oil paints thinned with turpentine or white spirits, or there are a bunch of pre-mixed products available. I'm using this MIG Productions Dark Wash. Unlike water-based varnishes, you don't just paint the wash on all over the model, you do what's called a pin wash, using a fine pointed brush to apply the wash specifically to the details. The low surface tension of the oil-based thinners lets the wash hug the details and flow around them smoothly. Because oil paints dry slowly, you can come back after 10 or 15 minutes and clean up any messy areas with a clean brush moistened with thinner. That'll take quite a while to dry properly, so I'm going to leave it overnight. The last thing I'm going to do is a light weathering dry brush of dry dust to give the tank a dusty look and also highlight the edges and the detail. And finally, I'll give it a coat of matte varnish. Thanks for watching.